Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. Alright, buckle up, Warhammer 40,000 fans, because today we're diving headfirst into one of the most agonizing and endlessly debated mysteries in the grim darkness of the far future: the Golden Throne. Seriously, this isn't just some ancient relic, it's the very heart of the Imperium's survival. A monstrous, gilded cage that sustains the dying Emperor, and in doing so, holds humanity back from utter annihilation. It's a device of such immense power and, let's be honest, such horrific cost that it makes you wonder, how did we even get here? Was this always the plan? Did the Emperor, in all his boundless brilliance and terrifying foresight, really intend for his eternal vigilance to come at such an unspeakable price, with millions of psychers sacrificed daily to feed its insatiable hunger? It's truly a question that keeps me up at night, pondering the sheer tragedy of it all. We know the current Golden Throne is a brutal necessity, a desperate measure to keep the Astronomicon alight and prevent demonic incursions from tearing reality apart. But what if there was another way? What if, somewhere in the Emperor's vast, unfathomable intellect, or hidden in the forgotten annals of humanity's past, there existed a prototype? A version of this incredible machine that could harness psychic energy without demanding such a soul-crushing toll? The idea of a golden throne that didn't require constant, agonizing sacrifice feels almost blasphemous to consider in the context of 40k's grim reality. But it's a hope, a whisper of what could have been, that simply refuses to die for many of us in the community. It forces us to confront not just the desperation of the present, but also the possibilities of a past, or perhaps even a future, where humanity's survival wasn't predicated on such an endless, agonizing spiritual drain. Every time I read about the sacrifices, I can't help but feel a pang of sorrow, wishing for a different path, a less cruel destiny for humanity. Thinking about the Emperor's genius and the sheer desperation that led to the Golden Throne is a real roller coaster of emotions for me. On one hand, you have this unparalleled being, an absolute titan of psychic power and scientific intellect, who literally guided humanity from the shadows of the Age of Strife. He could cure diseases with a touch, inspire entire legions with a word, and wage war on a cosmic scale. His understanding of the warp, of psychic energy, and of technology was so far beyond anything humanity had ever seen, it's almost impossible to comprehend. He built the Primarchs, engineered the Thunder Warriors, crafted incredibly advanced weaponry. He was the ultimate problem solver, the guy who always had a plan, no matter how audacious or seemingly impossible. So, when we talk about the Golden Throne, it's not just some random piece of tech. It's a direct reflection of his incredible capabilities. He didn't just stumble upon it. He designed it, or at least heavily modified an existing concept, to perform a task no one else could even conceive of. This machine, in its terrifying complexity, is a testament to his ambition and his mastery over forces that would drive lesser beings to madness. Yet, despite all that genius, the Golden Throne stands as a monument to his ultimate failure, or at least his most agonizing compromise. It wasn't a choice made lightly or out of a desire for perpetual suffering. It was born of absolute, dire necessity. The Imperial Webway project, his grand vision for a galactic network of safe, instantaneous travel, collapsed catastrophically. The psychic awakening across humanity, a tide of uncontrolled, nascent psychers, threatened to tear open the fabric of reality, creating more rifts than the Imperium could possibly contain. And then, of course, there was the Horus Heresy, the ultimate betrayal that shattered his dreams and left him mortally wounded. The Golden Throne, in its current form, became the only viable option to stave off complete spiritual and physical annihilation. It's truly heartbreaking to consider that such an omnipotent being was cornered into such a brutal solution. It wasn't about power or glory, it was about sheer, desperate survival. The alternative, as many fan theories endlessly point out, was a galaxy consumed by daemons, humanity's soul ripped to shreds by uncontrolled warp energies. The Emperor, even in his final moments, still fought to protect his species, even if that protection came at an unbearable cost. He put himself on that throne, not for self-aggrandizement, but because there was simply no other way to maintain the Astronomicon, that psychic lighthouse guiding every warp-faring vessel across the galaxy. Without it, interstellar travel would be impossible, and the Imperium, already reeling from civil war, would quickly collapse, isolating billions of worlds to be picked apart by Xenos and demons. This act, more than any other, highlights the crushing burden he bore, and the terrible choices he was forced to make for the survival of humankind, even if those choices led to the perpetual agony we see in the present day. It's a stark reminder that even the most powerful beings can be pushed to the brink, and sometimes the only path forward is the one paved with immense suffering. The irony is bitter. The greatest protector of humanity is also the source of its greatest ongoing tragedy. Forever trapped in a cycle of sacrifice he engineered out of sheer desperation. Let's talk about the technological landscape of the Great Crusade era, because it's absolutely fascinating and crucial to understanding the Golden Throne. When the Emperor embarked on his grand unification of humanity, he wasn't starting from scratch in terms of tech. Far from it. Humanity had seen incredible advancements during the Dark Age of technology, creating wonders that make even modern imperial tech look like flint knives. We're talking about STCs, standard template constructs, incredibly sophisticated blueprints for everything from agricultural systems to superweapons, capable of building self-repairing cities and star-spanning fleets. These weren't just theoretical. Many worlds, especially those that escaped the worst of the Age of Strife, still possessed remnants of this lost knowledge. Think about the Men of Iron, incredibly advanced artificial intelligences that fought alongside humanity, or the incredible warp drives that allowed for swift galactic travel. The sheer scale of technological prowess that humanity once wielded is mind-boggling, and it fundamentally shaped the understanding of what was possible during the early Imperium. However, and this is a huge however, much of that knowledge was shattered, lost, or corrupted during the Age of Strife. Imagine a galaxy plunged into chaos, with countless worlds isolated, their records destroyed, their scientists wiped out. The surviving tech priests of Mars, who would form the backbone of the Adeptus Mechanicus, spent millennia painstakingly rediscovering fragments of this lost glory. They revered technology as sacred, often understanding how to operate a device but not necessarily why it worked or the fundamental principles behind its creation. This creates a really interesting dynamic when considering the Golden Throne. Was it a completely new invention by the Emperor, or did he adapt or repurpose a piece of Dark Age of technology's psychic machinery? Many fans, myself included, lean towards the latter. It seems unlikely that even the Emperor, as brilliant as he was, could conjure such a complex piece of psychic technology out of thin air without some foundational understanding, especially given the sheer scale of the machine and its interaction with the raw forces of the warp. Consider the sheer scale of psychic phenomena that began to emerge during the Age of Strife and the Great Crusade. Psykers were becoming more common, and their powers were often uncontrollable and dangerous. It's plausible that before the Emperor even began his Webway project, attempts were made to understand, harness, or even suppress these burgeoning psychic abilities. Perhaps there were rudimentary psychic conduits, or devices designed to stabilize warp anomalies. The Mechanicum, in their endless search for STCs, might have unearthed fragmented data on such machines, even if they didn't fully grasp their implications. Some fan theories even suggest that the initial concept for a psychic amplifying or channeling device might have come from Xenos technology, perhaps adapted or reverse-engineered by the Emperor for human use. After all, the Eldar, with their sophisticated understanding of the Webway and psychic arts, had been around for millennia, and it's not beyond the realm of possibility that the Emperor, ever pragmatic, might have studied their forgotten ruins or adapted their principles to his own ends. The idea that the Golden Throne, in its earliest conceptual stages, might have been a cleaner or less sacrificial version of a psychic conduit, one built on a more complete understanding of its underlying principles, is a compelling one. The loss of that full understanding, whether through the ravages of time or deliberate suppression of dangerous knowledge, could explain why the desperate version of the throne required such a terrible price. It's a testament to the tragedy of humanity's fall from grace. So much knowledge, so much potential, simply vanished into the annals of a forgotten past, leaving us with only the grim necessities of the present. Let's shift gears and talk about the Imperial Webway project, because in my opinion, it's absolutely central to understanding the Golden Throne's current, horrific state. The Emperor, in his infinite wisdom, or perhaps his staggering ambition, had a vision for humanity's future that was far grander than simply conquering the galaxy with brute force. He envisioned a humanity united, guided by reason and science, eventually shedding the need for the treacherous warp entirely. His answer to the perils of interstellar travel was the Webway. For those who might not know, the Webway is an ancient labyrinthine network of extra-dimensional tunnels created by the Eldar in their Golden Age that allows for instantaneous and safe travel across vast distances, completely bypassing the warp's chaotic energies. It's essentially a cosmic highway system, but one built by superpsychics and incomprehensibly ancient technology. The Emperor's plan was audacious: to create a human-controlled section of the Webway, a safe passage directly from Terra to any corner of his burgeoning Imperium. This wasn't just about faster travel, it was about protecting humanity from the horrors of the warp, from demonic incursions, and from the insidious corruption that came with prolonged exposure to its psychic energies. He saw the dangers of uncontrolled psychic mutation and the ever-present threat of chaos, and he believed the Webway was the ultimate solution. He even had a dedicated chamber beneath the Imperial Palace where he poured his immense psychic power into forging this new segment, aided by the captured and reverse-engineered technology of the Eldari, specifically an ancient Webway portal device found on Luna. It was a project of truly monumental scale, requiring the focused psychic might of the most powerful being humanity had ever known. But oh, how it all went horribly wrong. The project was already precarious, a delicate dance with ancient, alien technology and the raw forces of the warp. The Emperor was stretched thin, simultaneously directing the Great Crusade, managing the fledgling Imperium, and pouring his psychic essence into this colossal undertaking. The first crack in this grand design, as most fans will readily agree, came with Magnus the Red's fateful decision to break the Emperor's psychic wards with a warp-infused warning about Horus's betrayal. This act, however well-intentioned, created a catastrophic breach in the nascent Imperial Webway. Demons poured into the palace's hidden chambers, threatening to consume Terra itself. The Emperor, already engaged in the final, desperate battle with Horus, was forced to divert immense power and attention to sealing this breach. And then, of course, the ultimate tragedy, his crippling injury at Horus's hands. Mortally wounded, his physical form shattered, the Emperor could no longer sustain the Webway project, nor could he exert his will to keep the warp energies at bay. The Golden Throne, which had previously been designed as a psychic amplifier and perhaps a control mechanism for the Webway, or even a way to enter the Webway without physical limitations, was suddenly repurposed out of sheer desperation. It became his life support, his cage, and the anchor for the Astronomicon. The dream of a warp-free future died with the Webway project, replaced by the grim reality of perpetual sacrifice. It's a heartbreaking narrative turn, to be honest. The Emperor's most ambitious and potentially benevolent project became the very reason for his eternal torment. A testament to how even the greatest plans can be undone by unforeseen circumstances and the machinations of chaos. The flaw wasn't in his vision, but in the brutal realities of the galaxy and the terrible timing of betrayal. It makes you wonder what kind of Webway infrastructure we would have seen if the heresy hadn't happened, and if the Golden Throne would have been a purely functional, non-sacrificial device then. Let's get into the grim heart of the matter, the soul-crushing, utterly horrific sacrifice demanded by the current Golden Throne. This isn't some abstract concept, it's a daily, agonizing reality for the Imperium, a stark reminder of the terrible price of their continued existence. Every single day, 1,000 psychers are rounded up, processed, and led to their inevitable demise, their very life force drained away to fuel the Emperor's perpetual vigil. 1,000 souls every single day for 10 millennia. Just try to wrap your head around that number. It's a scale of sacrifice so vast, so utterly dehumanizing, that it truly embodies the grim darkness of the setting. It's not just their physical lives that are taken, it's their psychic essence, their very soul, that is consumed. There's no glory in it, no heroic last stand, just a quiet, horrifying fade into nothingness as their power is siphoned away. This endless consumption fundamentally shapes our understanding of the Golden Throne's design and its current function. It tells us that this isn't merely a life support system, it's a colossal psychic battery, an arcane engine that requires constant, immense input of raw psychic energy to operate. Why does it need so much? Well, for one, it maintains the Astronomicon, that psychic lighthouse that guides every warp-traveling vessel across the vast, treacherous reaches of the galaxy. Without it, interstellar travel would become virtually impossible, stranding worlds and dooming humanity to isolated extinction. Imagine entire sectors cut off, left to starve or be devoured by Xenos and demons. The Astronomicon is the Imperium's lifeline, and the Golden Throne is its beating, agonizing heart. But it's more than just the Astronomicon. The throne is also desperately holding back the demonic incursions that erupted when the Imperial Webway project failed. It's a psychic dam, constantly shoring up a breach that threatens to unleash untold horrors upon Terra itself. The Emperor, through the throne, is literally holding the line against a tide of pure chaos that would otherwise overwhelm the throne world. This dual function, navigator for the Imperium and shield for Terra, explains to a terrifying degree the sheer magnitude of psychic energy required. It's an engine of galactic stability, powered by an endless river of human suffering. The implication of this constant sacrifice is chilling. It suggests that the Golden Throne in its current configuration is inherently inefficient, or perhaps fundamentally broken. If it were a perfect, self-sustaining psychic machine, why would it need such a continuous input of fresh souls? This is where a lot of fan theories come in, speculating about the throne's original design versus its current, desperate modifications. Many believe that the Emperor's initial intent was for a much more refined, self-sufficient psychic engine, perhaps one that drew power directly from the warp in a controlled manner, or even generated its own power. The horrifying reality of the daily sacrifices hints at a system that was either incomplete, damaged beyond repair, or hastily repurposed for a function it wasn't originally designed for. It's not just a sad thought, it's a horrifying one. Imagining the Emperor's genius twisted into this monstrous contraption simply to keep the lights on in a dying Imperium. It speaks volumes about the desperation of the age when it was pressed into service, and the sheer, unyielding grimness of a galaxy where survival demands such an unspeakable cost. You know, when you look at the sheer, unbridled horror of the Golden Throne's daily blood price, it's almost impossible not to wonder if there was a simpler past. Was there ever a point where such immense psychic power could be harnessed without literally consuming souls? This is where the fan theories truly shine, and honestly, they're some of my favorites because they offer a sliver of hope, a glimpse into a less nightmarish reality that could have been. The lore, while grim, does drop subtle hints that suggest the Golden Throne might not be the Emperor's original, intended design for a psychic device, but rather a grotesque evolution of something far more elegant and less demanding. One popular theory, and one I personally subscribe to, is that the Emperor, being the scientific and psychic genius he was, must have experimented with various forms of psychic technology long before the catastrophic failure of the Webway. It's just logical, right? He wouldn't have plunged headfirst into something as complex as a Webway portal without understanding the underlying principles of psychic amplification and containment. Perhaps early iterations of these devices were designed to simply focus or stabilize psychic energies, or to establish limited psychic communication across distances, rather than the galaxy-spanning, soul-devouring monstrosity we see today. Imagine a smaller, self-sustaining psychic beacon, perhaps drawing ambient warp energy in a controlled manner, or even using a specialized form of crystal or rare material to channel power rather than living beings. Another fascinating idea that pops up in discussions is the notion of proto-thrones or smaller-scale psychic engines that were capable of less demanding tasks. Maybe these were used during the Great Crusade for localized astropathic communication, or to power smaller, experimental warp drives that were safer than the traditional, volatile Geller fields. The lore occasionally mentions advanced, though often lost, psychic technology that existed during the Dark Age of technology. It's entirely conceivable that the Emperor, in his vast knowledge and resourcefulness, might have unearthed or reverse-engineered some of these ancient devices. These wouldn't necessarily be golden thrones in the sense we understand them, but rather precursors, demonstrating a more nuanced and less destructive approach to psychic engineering. Think of them as proof-of-concept models, demonstrating that the raw power could be managed without the current grotesque consumption. Furthermore, some theories suggest that the Emperor's initial plan for the Golden Throne, even for the Webway project, involved utilizing his own immense psychic power as the primary fuel source, perhaps with a smaller, secondary input. The idea that he foresaw needing 1,000 psychers a day from the very beginning seems to contradict his ultimate goal of elevating humanity beyond such primitive, sacrificial practices. It feels more likely that the current sacrifice is a consequence of the throne being severely damaged or repurposed far beyond its original design parameters, forcing it to draw in power from the nearest, most readily available source: living, psychically potent human beings. The whispers of a simpler past aren't just wishful thinking. They're grounded in the Emperor's established character as a pragmatic, visionary scientist and the logical progression of technological development. It's a tragic irony that the most advanced and protective machine became the most demanding and brutal, all because of unforeseen circumstances and the desperate need to simply survive. It leaves you with a lingering sense of, what if? What if the heresy hadn't happened? What if the Webway hadn't collapsed? Would the Golden Throne, in a less desperate reality, have been a beacon of hope instead of a monument to suffering? The thought is both tantalizing and incredibly depressing. Let's really dig into the Age of Strife, because I genuinely believe it holds some of the most tantalizing clues for a prototype Golden Throne that didn't demand endless sacrifice. The Age of Strife wasn't just a period of darkness and chaos. It was also a time of incredible, though often localized, technological innovation born out of desperation. Humanity was scattered, isolated, and under immense pressure from warp storms, Xenos incursions, and internal conflicts. What do you do when you're cut off from interstellar travel by raging warp storms and your nascent psychers are exploding or becoming demonic conduits? You try to find a solution, right? During this period, many human civilizations, completely cut off from Terra and each other, developed incredibly diverse and often bizarre technologies to cope with the unique challenges they faced. Some worlds might have stumbled upon ways to stabilize warp travel for short distances, or to amplify psychic communication without relying on conventional astropaths. Imagine isolated pockets of humanity, pushed to their absolute limits, developing their own unique psychic disciplines and the technology to support them. It's not a stretch to think that some of these solutions might have involved psychic energy channeling devices that were far more efficient and less destructive than the Golden Throne's current iteration. These wouldn't be galaxy-spanning behemoths, but localized solutions for local problems. Consider the various cults and esoteric orders that arose during the Age of Strife, many of whom delved deep into psychic phenomena out of necessity. Some might have developed devices that could suppress or channel psychic energy from individuals without necessarily destroying them. Perhaps they learned to draw ambient psychic energy from a planetary noosphere or a specific warp-stable location, rather than the raw, volatile power of a dying human soul. It's plausible that some of these forgotten wonders might have been rudimentary versions of psychic amplifiers or containment units, designed to protect communities from the nascent dangers of the warp. These wouldn't be thrones in the imperial sense, but proof of concept that psychic energy could be manipulated and utilized in less destructive ways. Furthermore, the Age of Strife saw the widespread use of sentient AIs, the Men of Iron, before their catastrophic rebellion. While primarily technological, it's not unreasonable to consider that some of these advanced intelligences might have dabbled in psycho-reactive technology, perhaps even creating devices that could interface with or harness psychic abilities without the inherent biological component of a living being. If the Emperor, during the Great Crusade, encountered fragments of these civilizations or their technology, he could have incorporated elements of their findings into his own grand projects. It's a tantalizing thought that some of the lost knowledge he sought to reclaim might have included more benign or efficient methods of psychic energy manipulation, concepts that were ultimately lost or deemed too dangerous to properly implement after the Age of Strife's horrors. The tragedy here is that so much of this knowledge, these forgotten wonders, were likely destroyed during the Age of Strife itself, or during the brutal unification campaigns of the Emperor. Imagine a small, isolated world with a functional, non-sacrificial psychic beacon, only for it to be glassed by an Orkwag or absorbed into the nascent Imperium, its unique tech deemed heretical or simply not understood by the Mechanicum. The very chaos that forced these innovations also ensured their widespread loss. So, while the Golden Throne might be a desperate last-ditch effort, its theoretical prototype could very well lie buried in the fragmented, forgotten history of humanity's darkest age. A testament to what ingenuity could achieve even in the face of annihilation, before the grim necessity of the present crushed all other possibilities. Now, this is a topic that really gets the fan theories buzzing. The possibility of Xenos' influence on the Golden Throne. I know, the Imperium despises Xenos and their tech, often burning it with extreme prejudice. But the Emperor was, above all else, pragmatic. He was willing to use any tool, any piece of knowledge, if it served his ultimate goal of humanity's survival and dominance. So, the idea that alien technology, or at least the principles behind it, might have played a role in the Golden Throne's development is not as far-fetched as it might initially seem. In fact, for me, it's a super compelling idea. The most obvious candidate for Xenos' influence, without a doubt, is the Eldari, or Eldar as they were known. These ancient aliens are masters of psychic technology, deeply intertwined with the warp and the undisputed creators of the Webway. The Emperor wasn't just aware of the Webway, he was actively attempting to build humanity's own section of it beneath the Imperial Palace. He even acquired a functional Eldari Webway gate on Luna and was actively dissecting and reverse engineering its secrets. This isn't just a minor detail, it's a massive, glaring clue. If he was trying to replicate the Webway, he had to understand the Eldar's unique brand of psychic engineering. So, it's entirely plausible that the foundational concepts for the Golden Throne, particularly its ability to channel and amplify immense psychic energy, could have been derived from Eldar tech. The Eldar use spirit stones to capture souls, wraithbone constructs that respond to psychic commands, and incredibly sophisticated psychic conduits for their Webway gates. While their methods are fundamentally different from the Imperium's brutal approach, the underlying principles of manipulating psychic energy in a controlled environment might have been what the Emperor sought to adapt. Perhaps an early prototype of the Golden Throne was an attempt to create a human version of an Eldar psycho device, but without their inherent understanding of the warp or their thousands of years of psychic evolution, it proved to be a far cruder, more destructive imitation. Imagine him looking at an Eldar spirit circuit and thinking, how can I make this work for humanity, but on an exponentially larger scale? The answer, tragically, might have been the sacrifice we see today. Beyond the Eldar, what about other ancient Xenos races? The enigmatic Necrons, with their mastery over energy and their complete lack of a warp signature, might offer a different kind of influence. While their technology isn't overtly psychic, their ability to manipulate fundamental forces of the universe might have offered insights into energy generation or containment that the Emperor could have adapted. Or consider the enigmatic nature of the Old Ones, a species with such profound understanding of the warp that they effectively created the Eldar and Orcs. While their tech is rarely seen, the Emperor, being as ancient as he was, might have encountered remnants of their work, or even gained some insight into their methods of warp shaping. The idea isn't that the Golden Throne is a direct copy of Xenos tech, but rather that the Emperor, in his relentless pursuit of knowledge and power for humanity, would have absorbed and adapted principles from any source available. The current throne, with its soul-draining mechanics, could be the ultimate tragic outcome of trying to force alien principles into a human framework. without fully grasping the nuances or missing critical components of the original, more elegant designs. It suggests a history where humanity, out of necessity, borrowed from the very aliens they would later purge, leading to a Frankensteinian machine that, while effective, carries a horrific burden. It's a testament to the desperate measures taken, and the dark irony that humanity's greatest safeguard might have its roots in the very Xenos it now despises. This part of the discussion always hits me hardest because it forces a stark comparison between the magnificent vision of the Emperor and the truly grim reality of the Golden Throne. It's a tragic tale of shattered dreams and desperate measures, illustrating how even the most brilliant plans can be derailed by betrayal and unforeseen circumstances. When the Emperor began his great crusade, his ambition wasn't just to conquer the stars. It was to enlighten humanity, to free them from superstition and fear, and to guide them into a golden age of reason and scientific advancement. He planned for a future where humanity would be safe from the horrors of the warp, where interstellar travel would be instantaneous and secure, and where the latent psychic potential within humanity could be harnessed and controlled without the risk of demonic possession or self-destruction. His grand plan for the Webway was absolutely central to this vision. He envisioned a future where humanity could navigate the galaxy through stable, secure tunnels, completely bypassing the unpredictable and dangerous currents of the warp. This would eliminate the need for dangerous warp jumps, the ever-present threat of Gellar field failures, and the soul-crushing toll taken on astropaths who constantly communed with the warp. It was a vision of control, of safety, and of a genuinely prosperous future for humanity. He, the master of psychic arts, would sit at the nexus of this new Webway, guiding humanity to a destiny free from the lurking horrors of chaos. This wasn't just about survival, it was about thriving, about building an imperium founded on logic and progress, not on fear and sacrifice. Now, contrast that with the grim reality of the Golden Throne as it exists in the 40th millennium. It's a literal life support machine, a gilded cage for a dying god. Instead of being a beacon of scientific advancement and a gateway to a secure future, it's a monument to constant, horrific sacrifice. 1,000 psychers are fed to it daily, their souls consumed to keep the Astronomicon alive and to hold back the demonic tide threatening to engulf Terra. This isn't the controlled, elegant channeling of psychic energy that the Emperor surely envisioned. This is a brutal, desperate siphoning, a last-ditch effort to keep the lights on in a galaxy drowning in darkness. The Emperor's grand ambition to shield humanity from the warp led directly to a device that now requires the constant siphoning of human psychic energy, making it a horrifying irony. The Webway project, which was meant to free humanity from the warp's dangers, catastrophically failed and became the very reason for the Golden Throne's desperate function. It's truly heartbreaking to consider that the greatest mind in human history, who envisioned a future free from suffering and superstition, is now trapped in a perpetual state of agony, sustained by the very kind of horrific sacrifice he sought to eliminate. This stark contrast between vision and reality is what makes the Golden Throne such a powerful yet profoundly tragic symbol in Warhammer 40,000. It's a constant reminder that even the most benevolent intentions can be twisted and corrupted by the chaotic forces of the galaxy and the bitter sting of betrayal. It speaks to the idea that sometimes, even for a being as powerful as the Emperor, survival comes at a cost so immense it overshadows any initial grand design. The Golden Throne isn't just a machine, it's a testament to lost dreams, and a galaxy where even the greatest victories are stained with unspeakable suffering. It's a truly powerful narrative device that keeps fans like me debating and pondering the what-ifs and the ultimate futility of battling against the inevitable tides of entropy and chaos. Let's really dive into the what-if here, because it's a tantalizing thought. What if there was a prototype of the Golden Throne that worked without the horrific daily sacrifice? What would that mean for the Imperium? Honestly, it's almost impossible to fully grasp the ramifications because it would fundamentally alter the entire fabric of Warhammer 40,000. It's not just a small tweak, it's a seismic shift that would redefine everything we know about humanity's grim struggle for survival. Firstly, and most obviously, the sheer moral burden would be lifted. Imagine an Imperium where 1,000 innocent psychers aren't condemned to a horrific, soul-draining death every single day. That's 365,000 lives saved each year, every year, for 10,000 years. The sheer number of lives spared is mind-boggling, but more importantly, it would change the very ethical foundation of the Imperium. No longer would survival be predicated on such an unspeakable, industrial-scale atrocity. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica, instead of being a morbid collection agency for souls, could focus entirely on training astropaths for communication, allowing psychers to serve the Imperium in other, more constructive ways without the ultimate sword of Damocles hanging over their heads. This would foster a completely different perception of psychers within Imperial society. Perhaps less fear, more integration, and certainly less desperate culling. Beyond the moral aspect, the practical implications are enormous. Think about the resources currently dedicated to finding, transporting, and processing these 1,000 psychers daily. That's a massive logistical undertaking, requiring countless ships, personnel, and a bureaucracy of dread. If that burden were lifted, those resources could be redirected to other vital areas of the Imperium, bolstering the Imperial Guard, maintaining the fleet, or even pursuing technological advancements. It's a huge drain on the Imperium's already stretched infrastructure. Freeing up these resources wouldn't magically solve all the Imperium's problems, but it would certainly alleviate one of its most persistent and horrifying bottlenecks. Furthermore, a sacrifice-free throne would imply a deeper, more complete understanding of psychic energy. If the Emperor had developed such a prototype, it would mean he had found a way to harness the warp's power cleanly, perhaps even safely, without the risks of demonic incursions or the need for biological fuel. This could lead to an explosion of psychic-based technology that is currently unthinkable. We might see psychic power integrated into daily life in ways that are currently only dreams or nightmares. Clean energy, advanced healing, more efficient communication, perhaps even limited warp manipulation that doesn't rely on Geller fields. It would fundamentally change humanity's relationship with the warp, turning it from a terrifying, uncontrollable force into something that could be understood and utilized with less catastrophic consequences. And what about the Emperor himself? If the throne didn't require constant psychic input, perhaps his current state of living death would be different. Could he, perhaps, even slowly recover? This is where fan speculation goes wild. If the throne was merely a life support system and not a psychic energy sink, could his consciousness be more active, more able to guide the Imperium directly, rather than through cryptic messages and the occasional saintly miracle? It opens up the possibility of a more proactive emperor, perhaps even one who could eventually return to a more physical form, transforming the Imperium from a desperate, dying empire into something truly glorious, fulfilling the Emperor's original benevolent vision. It's a dream, of course, a stark contrast to the grim reality, but it shows just how profound the implications of a sacrifice-free prototype truly are for the lore of Warhammer 40,000. It speaks to the potential that was lost, the path not taken, and the sheer tragedy of the Imperium's current, agonizing existence. Even with all the tantalizing theories about prototypes and less demanding alternatives, we have to face the grim reality. The current Golden Throne is an enduring, inescapable burden for the Imperium. For 10,000 years, it has consumed lives, and there seems to be no way out. This isn't just a technological problem, it's a spiritual, logistical, and existential one that defines the very essence of the Warhammer 40,000 setting. The impossibility of escaping its demands is, to me, one of the most tragic and foundational elements of the lore. Think about it. The Adeptus Mechanicus, the supposed masters of technology, have been trying for millennia to understand, maintain, and perhaps even improve the Golden Throne. Yet, they are constantly performing desperate rites, replacing failed components with barely understood alien tech, and struggling to keep it from failing entirely. Their efforts aren't about reducing the sacrifice, they're about preventing total catastrophic shutdown. This implies that the throne isn't merely a complex machine. It's a unique, irreplaceable artifact of immense power that defies conventional understanding, even for the most devoted tech priests. They can keep it running, but they can't change its fundamental, soul-devouring nature. The sheer veneration and almost religious awe with which they approach it speaks volumes about their inability to truly comprehend or alter its core functions. It's like trying to rebuild a living god from a broken blueprint. They simply don't have the full picture. The scale of the energy demands is another critical factor. The Astronomicon is a galaxy-spanning psychic beacon, a lighthouse in the warp that allows for interstellar travel. Holding back the demonic breach beneath the Imperial Palace is a constant, titanic struggle against the forces of chaos. These aren't minor tasks, they are cosmic in scale. It stands to reason that any machine performing such gargantuan feats would require an equally immense power source. And in the Imperium's current state, with lost knowledge and fragmented technology, the only readily available source of that much raw psychic energy is the continuous sacrifice of human souls. It's a cruel feedback loop. Humanity needs the throne to survive, and the throne needs humanity's suffering to function. Furthermore, the very thought of turning off or even modifying the Golden Throne sends shivers down the spine of every Imperial official. The consequences would be immediate and apocalyptic. Without the Astronomicon, the Imperium would collapse into isolated star systems, easy prey for Xenos and chaos. Without the Emperor's psychic shield, Terra itself would be consumed by demons, becoming a new Eye of Terror. The risk is simply too great. This isn't a piece of equipment that can be taken offline for maintenance or upgraded. It's a life support system for a dying god, and by extension, for an entire galaxy. Every cogitator, every psychic conduit, every biocomponent is inextricably linked to the survival of billions. Even if a sacrifice-free prototype did exist in the past, the knowledge of how to build or operate it in the current age is undoubtedly lost. The Emperor is no longer able to guide humanity in its reconstruction. The Mechanicum are obsessed with ritual and dogma, not true innovation based on fundamental principles. The concept of creating a truly self-sustaining, non-sacrificial psychic engine is likely beyond their current capabilities, even if they had the theoretical blueprints. The Imperium is trapped in a cycle of desperate pragmatism, forced to perpetuate a horror because the alternative is unimaginable annihilation. This enduring burden, this eternal penance, is what gives Warhammer 40,000 its unique flavor of tragic grandeur. It's a setting where humanity's greatest triumph, its very survival, is built upon an unspeakable, never-ending sacrifice. So, as we pull back from this deep dive into the Golden Throne, we're left with a mix of awe, wonder, and profound tragedy. The question of whether a prototype existed that worked without sacrifice isn't just academic. It speaks to the very heart of what Warhammer 40,000 is all about. While there are tantalizing hints and compelling fan theories suggesting a simpler, less brutal past, perhaps a more elegant design from the dark age of technology, or even adapted Xenos principles, the grim reality of the present is undeniable. The Golden Throne, in its current form, is a monstrous engine of survival, demanding an unspeakable price every single day. It's a stark reminder of the Emperor's incredible genius, tempered by his ultimate desperation and the catastrophic betrayal that shattered his grand vision. He dreamed of guiding humanity to a brighter, safer future, free from the warp's insidious grasp through the Imperial Webway. Yet, that dream imploded, leaving behind a dying god chained to a machine that consumes souls just to keep the lights on in a collapsing galaxy. The impossibility of escaping this burden defines the Imperium. It's a testament to how even the greatest power can be twisted into a perpetual penance, a constant battle against forces that threaten to tear reality apart. Beyond the technicalities and the historical theories, what truly makes the Golden Throne a central pillar of Warhammer 40,000's grimdark setting is its profound, devastating human cost, and the psychological scars it has etched into the very soul of the Imperium. This isn't just about the 1,000 psychers sacrifice daily. It's about the pervasive fear, the ingrained fanaticism, and the desperate, often brutal pragmatism that has become humanity's defining characteristic. It's a constant, agonizing reminder that survival isn't free and the price is always paid in blood and despair. Think about the everyday citizen of the Imperium. What do they know of the Golden Throne? They likely know it sustains the Emperor, their divine protector, and that it requires a constant, unspecified tribute of psychers. This knowledge, vague as it may be, breeds an immense existential dread. Psychers, those born with the cursed gift, live in constant fear of being discovered, of being rounded up by the black ships and taken to Terra. Their very existence is a double-edged sword, a potential weapon for the Imperium, but also potential fuel for its most terrifying machine. This isn't just a physical threat, it's a psychological one that warps societal norms. Psychers are often ostracized, feared, and even hunted, not just for the danger they pose if uncontrolled, but because they represent a resource that the Golden Throne demands. The fear of mutation, of demonic possession, and of ultimately ending up on the throne shapes public perception and fosters a deeply ingrained prejudice against those with psychic abilities. It's a constant, terrifying gamble for millions of souls across the galaxy, reinforcing a societal structure built on suspicion and control. For the Adeptus Terra, and especially the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, the Golden Throne isn't a theory, it's their inescapable burden. They are the ones responsible for gathering, screening, and delivering the daily tithe of psychers. Imagine the psychological toll that must take on individuals who, day in and day out, condemn others to such a horrifying fate. They likely rationalize it as a necessary evil, a grim duty to safeguard humanity. But can you truly remain untouched by such a process? This creates a culture of extreme detachment, of seeing individuals as mere energy conduits, necessary sacrifices for the greater good. It breeds a certain ruthlessness, a willingness to accept the most unspeakable acts if it means the Imperium endures for another day. This cold, hard pragmatism, born from the throne's demands, seeps into every level of Imperial administration, making it a truly unforgiving and unyielding system. The constant need for psychers also contributes to the Imperium's stagnant approach to psychic development. Instead of nurturing and understanding psychic abilities, they are simply harvested for a single, critical purpose. Furthermore, the Golden Throne's sheer eternal need reinforces the Imperium's deeply ingrained fatalism. There's no hope for a quick fix, no grand victory that will suddenly free the Emperor and alleviate the suffering. Instead, there is only the grinding, endless struggle, sustained by an agonizing, perpetual sacrifice. This lack of a clear, achievable end goal breeds a desperate stoicism, a grim acceptance of their unchangeable lot. It contributes to the Imperium's technological stagnation, as many believe that only the Emperor's current state and the throne's function can sustain them. The idea of true innovation or radical change is often viewed with suspicion, as it might upset the delicate, horrifying balance that keeps humanity alive. This psychological burden permeates everything, from the lowliest serf to the highest lord, shaping their worldview and cementing the grimdark aesthetic. Ultimately, the Golden Throne is more than just a machine. It's a living symbol of humanity's eternal penance, a monument to a past that haunts the present, and a chilling vision of a future where survival is the only victory, no matter the cost. It's a constant, agonizing truth that profoundly impacts the psyche of every being within the Imperium, shaping their beliefs, their fears, and their unending, desperate fight against the darkness. It ensures that the hope for a sacrifice-free prototype remains just that, a whisper of what could have been, forever overshadowed by the brutal reality of what is. One of the most frustrating, yet undeniably defining aspects of the Imperium in Warhammer 40,000 is its crippling technological stagnation, inextricably linked with its zealous religious dogma. This combination, more than anything else, solidifies the Golden Throne's unyielding demand for sacrifice. If the Emperor truly had a sacrifice-free prototype, or if the means to create one existed, it seems utterly baffling that the Imperium hasn't rediscovered or replicated it in 10 millennia. But understanding the culture of the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Imperial Creed sheds a terrifying light on why this is tragically impossible. The Adeptus Mechanicus, the technological arm of the Imperium, doesn't approach technology as a science to be constantly advanced and innovated upon. For them, technology is a sacred, arcane mystery, revealed by the machine god and, in their most extreme interpretations, by the Emperor himself. Every machine, from a simple cogitator to a starship, is a holy relic, a fragment of divine knowledge. Innovation, as we understand it, is heresy. Their primary directive is to preserve, maintain, and rediscover lost standard template constructs, STCs, not to create new ones. They believe that humanity's technological peak was during the dark age of technology, and that anything new is inherently dangerous or a pale imitation of ancient perfection. This mindset is critical. They are archaeologists of power, not engineers of progress. When it comes to the Golden Throne, this reverence is amplified 1,000-fold. The throne isn't just a machine, it's the living reliquary of the God Emperor. It is the most holy, most complex, and most utterly incomprehensible piece of technology in the Imperium. To even suggest radical modification or to fully dissect its workings is considered the highest blasphemy by many within the Mechanicus. Their efforts are focused solely on its maintenance, on performing the arcane rites and replacing the failing components with painstaking devotion, often without truly understanding why a particular component works or what its original function might have been. They're working from fragmented schematics and millennia of accumulated ritualized knowledge, not from a complete scientific understanding. This ritualistic approach means that even if a theoretical prototype existed, the knowledge to properly understand and recreate it has been lost, replaced by dogma and rote procedure. The Imperial Creed, which has grown from veneration of the Emperor to outright deification, further entrenches this stagnation. The Emperor is no longer just a scientist or a warlord. He is the divine savior, interred on his sacred golden throne, eternally sacrificing himself for humanity. To question the throne's function, or to seek a less sacrificial alternative, could be seen as questioning the Emperor's divine will or the sacred necessity of his suffering. This religious fervor acts as a powerful barrier to true scientific inquiry. Any deviation from the established, agonizing status quo is viewed as a potential path to heresy, a challenge to the very foundation of the Imperium's faith. The priests of the ecclesiarchy and the inquisitors would swiftly put down any attempts at innovation that strayed too far from sanctioned doctrine. The fear of damnation is a far more potent inhibitor than any physical barrier. This dual force of technological dogma and religious fanaticism creates a self-perpetuating cycle of stagnation. The Imperium cannot escape the Golden Throne's demands because the very institutions that might theoretically find a solution are bound by beliefs that forbid true progress. They are trapped in a cycle of maintaining a dying artifact with increasingly desperate measures rather than seeking a true resolution. It's a tragic paradox. The machine that preserves humanity also perpetuates the very conditions that prevent humanity from truly advancing beyond its current, grim fate. This endless, unyielding cycle is what truly cements the Golden Throne as both a source of life and an eternal, unbreaking chain. The Golden Throne isn't just a piece of technology, it's the ultimate symbol of humanity's enduring yet agonizing struggle for existence in a hostile universe. It represents the crushing weight of impossible choices, the bitter irony of sacrifice, and the enduring nature of hope in the face of utter despair. It's a relic that inspires both reverence and horror, a testament to what humanity can achieve and what it's forced to endure, all for the sake of another day. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of one of Warhammer 40,000's most compelling mysteries. What are your thoughts on the Golden Throne? Do you believe a sacrifice-free prototype ever existed, or is the current horror an inherent part of its design? Let me know in the comments below.